Genesis filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy last night came as a surprise to virtually no one. It's had withdrawals halted since November, which is also back when the Wall Street Journal reported that Genesis was looking for an emergency bailout of $1 billion and could not find any takers. But even though we knew it was coming, it's still a significant hit to Barry Silbert's crypto empire.
The Genesis ship is sinking and there doesn't seem to be anyone around to toss them a life raft. Barry Silbert and the Winklevi may have to get used to a new life under the sea. But go ahead and throw that subscribe button a lifeline while you're in our waters. Thanks for watching.
Now, in terms of the filing that went up on the court docket late last night, we're specifically talking about the crypto lending business at Genesis. The company's derivatives and spot trading business will continue unhindered, as will Genesis Global Trading. The company listed over 100,000 creditors, with Gemini at the top of that list. It also had aggregate liabilities potentially as high as $11 billion. This puts Genesis alongside other fallen crypto exchanges and lenders, including BlockFi, FTX, Celsius, and Voyager. In terms of how we got here, now, even though things went south for Genesis in November, problems at the company really go back to this spring and the now bankrupt crypto hedge fund Three Arrows Capital. Genesis had loaned them over $2.3 billion worth of assets, and that's part of why the Genesis failure is so hard on its parent company, Digital Currency Group. DCG was forced to take over its billion-dollar liability stemming from the 3AC collapse. So DCG itself now owes a growing debt of more than $3 billion in this sort of endless knock-on contagion effect. It's also worth noting, Dom, that CoinDesk, another DCG property, is reportedly looking for a buyer, and there are reports that DCG has suspended dividends this week in an apparent effort to save cash.
Okay, so this is important because you mentioned Gemini, right? And that's the Winklevoss brothers who run Gemini. And Barry Silbert at DCG, they've been locked in this very heated exchange for weeks now. Gemini is listed as the top unsecured creditor, as you point out. Now, we heard from Cameron Winklevoss last night. Where does Gemini fit into the story here? Why exactly is there so much animosity right now growing between Silbert and the Winklevi? Yeah,
it's a great question. So Gemini is a huge part of this Genesis bankruptcy. Last night's filing lists the 50 largest unsecured creditors, and Gemini is at the top of that list by a mile, $765.9 million, more than $300 million up from the next creditor on the list. And Gemini was linked to Genesis through an offering called Earn, this nearly two-year-old product from Gemini that promoted returns of up to 8% on customer deposits. With Earn, Gemini loaned client money to Genesis for placement across various crypto trading desks and borrowers. And for a while, the partnership worked out great. But when Genesis halted withdrawals in November, it forced Gemini to quickly follow suit with its Earn product. And now Gemini has more than 340,000 very unhappy customers of its own. And since then, the Winklevoss brothers and Barry Silbert have been locked in this heated and at times very public fight. So as you said, Cameron Winklevoss was quick to respond to the bankruptcy news, tweeting last night that Silbert and DCG, quote, continue to refuse to offer creditors a fair deal. He added that they had been preparing to take direct legal action against Barry, DCG, and others. So certainly not mincing words here, Dom.
Now coming from crypto firm Genesis, set to plan a bankruptcy filing. Now, of course, this does follow some news. They did halt their quarterly dividends to investors. This is the crypto lending unit of Digital Currency Group, of course, led by the Winklevoss twins. I want to get a little bit more context on this story and exactly what this means and how we even got here. Joining us now, Bloomberg's Shonali Bassick to break things all crypto for us. Shonali, walk us through how we got to this point.
Now, listen, we're getting to the point here, as you say, Genesis Global Capital. It's the lending unit of not only Digital Currency Group, but that big trading business that is known as Genesis, that is a big part of the crypto industry. Now, this Global Capital unit had suspended withdrawals back in November. This is the counterparty to that Gemini business, Gemini Earn, that also halted withdrawals. It's been a very bitter fight playing out in real time, as well as these two businesses facing scrutiny from the SEC, sued by the SEC for the marketing and dissemination of these products. Now, remember, remember, Genesis Global Capital, the plans here may change. The talks are ongoing. They have been talking to creditor groups amid this liquidity crunch. The question has been for a while now how much the plans here at the Global Capital unit could start to spiral into other parts of this empire that is Digital Currency Group, run by Barry Silbert, who is very well known on Wall Street, previously had his own career on Wall Street, to the point that you're making it's DCG that told shareholders that it would suspend quarterly dividends to conserve cash, according to that January 17th letter. An effort to go through a bankruptcy proceeding will put questions forward on the relationship again between DCG and Genesis, as there were intercompany loans there, but there are other counterparties here to consider. So in the event of a bankruptcy process, who gets what back and in what order, given the closeness to Digital Currency Group, and does this stave off Digital Currency Group's broader concerns more largely if a bankruptcy process comes to fruition?
And Shanali, just another reminder of the ripple effects from all these headlines we have been watching unfold these last few weeks and months, the obvious one being the collapse of FTX.
Absolutely. Remember, FTX, Digital Currency Group, this global capital unit, a lot of these issues really stemmed in the beginning to the middle of last year when we saw a lot of the hiccups that happened in the crypto industry that started to really burst the bubble, that leverage bubble that was accumulating here when it comes to the crypto industry. After the 3AC debacle, 3AC was a counterparty to Genesis as well. DCG really came in and helped stave off those concerns. But when you got to the point that there was a broader liquidity crunch in the industry by the end of the last year, what you had for Gemini Earn at least was another 340,000 customers here in which those withdrawals were halted. So what happens now for those customers of Genesis at Gemini Earned, the derivative business here, derivative meaning they are a counterparty to that business and have the money that is owed to those customers. Where do those 340 customers fall in line should a bankruptcy proceeding ensue? Remember, this is a plan to prepare a bankruptcy filing as soon as this week. Plans could change. They have been in discussions with creditors throughout this process here.